The drama surrounding Caitlin Clark and Kate Martin doesn't begin under bright WNBA lights or inside a sold out arena buzzing with anticipation. It begins somewhere quieter, more intimate. Inside college gyms, long practices, late night conversations, and a friendship that for years felt unbreakable. Before the cameras, before the headlines, before the world turned their story into something cinematic, they were simply teammates. And more importantly, they were best friends. And that's what makes this moment, this game, feel different. Because now, for the first time, they're not wearing the same jersey. The arena hums with energy as the Indiana Fever prepare to face the reigning champions, the Las Vegas Aces. It's another stop on what many have started calling the Clark Tour, a season defined not just by wins and losses, but by the gravitational pull of a rookie who has already begun reshaping the league's spotlight. Caitlin Clark enters the game carrying momentum, fresh off her first professional victory, her confidence building with every possession, every pass, every deep three that sends crowds into a frenzy. But this isn't just another game, because somewhere across the court, wearing different colors, is someone who knows her better than almost anyone else, Kate Martin. For 4 years, they built something together at Iowa. Chemistry that couldn't be taught, trust that didn't need to be spoken. They weren't just teammates running plays, they were extensions of each other on the court. When Clark pushed the pace, Martin was there. When the moment got big, they both leaned into it. And off the court, the bond only deepened. Roommates, friends, confidants, the kind of connection that turns teammates into family. So when Martin steps onto the floor in this game, something feels off. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. There's a subtle tension in the air. Not hostility, not bitterness, but something quieter, something more complicated. The kind of feeling that only exists when two people who once shared everything are suddenly on opposite sides. Martin doesn't smile, not even for a second, and Clark notices. The game itself wastes no time establishing its tone. The Aces, led by the dominant presence of Asia Wilson, come in as the measuring stick of the league. Back-to-back champions, ruthless, efficient, relentless. Wilson moves with a kind of inevitability. Footwork so precise it feels rehearsed. Finishes so smooth they seem effortless. Defenders throw everything at her, but it hardly matters. She finds her spots. She always does. Clark, on the other hand, is navigating something different. As a rookie, every game is a lesson, every possession a test. But she's not overwhelmed. She's adapting, reading defenses, anticipating traps, finding angles. There's a moment early on where she recognizes the blitz coming and shifts left, pulling defenders away just enough to open space for Leah Boston. It's subtle, almost invisible if you're not looking for it, but it's the kind of play that reveals how quickly she's learning. Still, this is not college anymore. This is the Aces. The pace is faster, the windows are tighter, the margin for error is almost non-existent. And yet, for a stretch, the Indiana holds its own. There's rhythm in their offense. Kelsey Mitchell finds her groove, attacking with speed that slices through the defense. The ball moves cleanly, rotations click into place, and for a moment, the Fever look like they belong in this fight. Even as the Aces push back, even as Wilson continues to dominate, there's resistance, there's belief. Then comes the moment everyone was waiting for. Martin checks into the game. The crowd reacts instantly. She's already become a fan favorite, not because of flashy highlights or scoring explosions, but because of something harder to quantify: effort, energy, leadership. The kind of player who does the small things that don't always show up in the box score, but matter as just as much as anything else. And now she's standing across from Clark, defending her. The familiarity between them is almost eerie. Clark knows Martin's defensive instincts, knows when she'll close out, how she'll position her body, how she reads passing lanes. And Martin, she knows Clark's tendencies just as well. The hesitation dribble, the quick pull-up, the way she manipulates space. It's like watching two people play chess with the same playbook. Clark doesn't force anything. She doesn't test Martin recklessly. There's patience in her approach, a recognition that this isn't just about proving something, it's about understanding the moment. Because beneath the competition, beneath the intensity, there's still respect, still history. And that history runs deep. Long before this game, long before the WNBA, Kate Martin was just a kid in Illinois, growing up immersed in basketball. The sport wasn't just something she played, it was part of her identity. Her father coached, her family lived and breathed the game. And Iowa wasn't just a school, it was a dream, a place she had idolized long before she ever wore the jersey. Then came Clark, a highly touted recruit, a player everyone was already talking about before she even stepped on campus. For some, that kind of arrival creates distance, pressure, competition. But for Martin, it sparked something else. It made her better. That's how their partnership began, not as rivals, but as catalysts for each other's growth. Clark brought scoring brilliance, vision, and star power. Martin brought leadership, toughness, and a voice that carried through practices and locker rooms. One didn't overshadow the other, they complemented each other. And over time, that connection turned into something rare, not just chemistry, trust. The kind of trust that leads to late-night conversations about decisions that shape entire careers. Like the moment Martin had to decide whether to leave college or stay one more year. It wasn't an easy choice. Opportunities were waiting. A professional future was within reach. But so was something else. A final season. One more run. One more chance to chase a championship that had slipped through their fingers. And Clark, she wanted her to stay. Not just as a teammate, but as a friend. In the end, Martin chose to come back, to extend the journey, to spend one more year building something alongside Clark. And that decision, in hindsight, feels like the emotional backbone of everything we're seeing now. Because without that extra year, this moment might not feel the same. This game might not carry this weight. Back in the present, the action continues to unfold. The Aces assert their dominance in stretches, reminding everyone why they're champions. Wilson continues her relentless performance, inching closer to record-breaking territory. The Fever fight, adjust, respond, but the gap in experience shows. And through it all, Clark and Martin move through the game like two intersecting storylines. They don't have a dramatic confrontation. There's no single explosive moment where everything boils over. Instead, it's quieter than that, more subtle. A defensive stop here, a missed connection there, a glance that lasts just a second too long. It's not about what's said, it's about what isn't. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones you have to feel. And this one, it feels like the beginning of something new. Not the end of a friendship, but the evolution of it. Because now they're no longer chasing the same goal, they're chasing each other. And maybe that's what makes this story so compelling. Not the rivalry itself, but the foundation beneath it. The years of shared experience that turn every matchup into something deeper than just a game. Something personal. Something real. As the final moments tick away and the outcome becomes inevitable, the narrative doesn't resolve neatly. There's no cinematic ending, no dramatic embrace at center court, just two competitors walking off in different directions, carrying with them everything that came before and everything that still lies ahead. Because this isn't the last time they'll face each other, not even close. This is just chapter 1. And if this game proved anything, it's that the story of Caitlin Clark and Kate Martin is far from over. It's evolving, shifting, growing into something that might define a new kind of rivalry in the WNBA, one built not on animosity, but on history, on respect, on friendship tested under the brightest lights. So the real question isn't who won this game, it's what happens next. Because when best friends become opponents, every future meeting carries a little more weight. Every play, every possession, every moment becomes part of a larger story still being written. And if this was just the beginning, how far can it go? What do you think? Does this rivalry become one of the defining storylines of the league, or will their friendship always rise above the competition? And when they meet again, will it feel different or exactly the same? Let me know your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of basketball's most emotional matchups, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next chapter. The drama surrounding Caitlin Clark and Kate Martin doesn't explode all at once. It builds slowly, almost quietly, like the most meaningful stories always do. It isn't born from conflict or controversy, but from something far more complicated, a connection. A connection so strong that when it finally shifts, when circumstances force it to evolve, the result feels less like a rivalry and more like a moment suspended between past and present. And to understand that moment, you have to go back, not to a championship game, not to a sold-out arena, but to something far simpler, a classroom. A father standing in front of students answering a routine question. Tell us, Kate Martin. He said it casually. Kate Martin is my daughter. And then something unexpected happened. The room reacted, not politely, not mildly, but with genuine excitement, surprise, recognition. These weren't just students hearing a random fact. They knew the name. They had seen her play. Some of them had watched games because of her. One even said it outright. They watched women's basketball because their teacher's daughter was on the team. That's when it hits. This isn't small anymore. What started as a family story, as a local dream, had grown into something that reached beyond gym walls and into living rooms, classrooms, and conversations across the country. And that realization doesn't just belong to Kate's father, it belongs to everyone connected to this journey. Because this story, it's bigger than basketball. But basketball is where it all comes together. The Iowa years feel almost mythical in hindsight, a program that transformed into the center of the sports world, a team that didn't just win games, they captivated people. Night after night, arenas filled, not just with fans, but with believers, people who saw something different in this team, something authentic. At the center of it all stood Caitlin Clark, a player whose talent felt almost disruptive, the kind of player who forces the game to adjust to her, not the other way around. Deep threes, impossible passes, a confidence that never wavered. She wasn't just playing basketball, she was redefining how it could be played. But even the brightest spotlight creates shadows, and in those spaces, you find players like Kate Martin. Not hidden, not overlooked, at least not by the people who mattered most, but operating in a different kind of importance. If Clark was the headline, Martin was the structure holding the story together, the voice in the huddle, the energy in practice, the player who didn't need the ball to impact the game, but always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Her teammates felt it, her coaches relied on it, and Clark understood it better than anyone. Their relationship wasn't built overnight. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It grew through repetition, through shared experiences, through the kind of moments that never make highlight reels, late practices, quiet conversations, small decisions that build trust over time. They became roommates, friends, something closer to family than teammates. And that's what made their success feel so complete. It wasn't just talent, it was chemistry. Real chemistry, the kind you can't fake, can't manufacture, can't teach. Together, they chased something bigger than themselves, a championship. In 2023, they came close, so close it almost felt inevitable. The run was magical, each game building momentum, each win pulling more people into the story. By the time they reached the final, it felt like destiny. But sports don't care about destiny. They lost. And in that loss, something shifted. Not broken, not ended, but changed. Because losing at that stage doesn't just hurt, it lingers. It asks questions that don't have easy answers. What if? What now? For Martin, those questions became very real. That season could have been the end, the logical ending. Graduation, moving on, stepping into the next phase of life. She had given everything to the program. She had nothing left to prove. But sometimes, logic doesn't win. Emotion does. Voices around her, coaches, teammates, especially Clark, urged her to stay. Not out of obligation, but out of belief. There was still something unfinished, another chance, another year to build, to grow, to chase what had slipped away. And so she made a decision that would shape everything that followed. She stayed. That extra year didn't just extend her career, it deepened the story. It added layers. It gave their partnership one more chapter, one more opportunity to leave something lasting. And for a while, it worked. The team returned, stronger, more experienced, more connected. They fought their way back to the top, back to the championship stage. Once again, the spotlight found them. Once again, the expectations rose. And once again, they fell short. Another loss. Another ending that didn't feel like it should have ended that way. This time, though, there was no decision left to make. For Clark, the next step was clear. The WNBA wasn't just an option, it was the next stage for a player already carrying the weight of expectation. Her departure felt like a closing of a legendary chapter. For Martin, it felt like standing at the edge of uncertainty. No guarantees, no spotlight, just a choice. Does she keep going or does she walk away? She chose to keep going, not because it was easy, not because it was certain, but because she loved the game, because she wasn't ready to let it go, because somewhere inside there was still belief that there was more to her story. So she entered the draft. Not as a headline, not as a sure thing. She wasn't invited to the biggest moments. She wasn't seated where cameras would find her easily. In many ways, she was invisible to the broader audience watching the event unfold. But she was there, and that mattered. Because sometimes, being there is all it takes. When the Las Vegas Aces called her name with the 18th pick, it didn't feel like a typical draft moment. It felt like something deeper. A recognition of everything that doesn't always get recognized. Effort, leadership, resilience. All the qualities that don't always show up in statistics but define winning teams. Even Clark didn't see it coming. She was there to support, to celebrate, and suddenly the moment belonged to both of them again. Different paths, same story. But the WNBA is not college. There's no time to settle in, no gradual transition. The pace is faster, the expectations are higher, the competition is relentless. And for both Clark and Martin, the adjustment demanded everything they had. Clark entered as a centerpiece, every defense designed to stop her, every game circled, every mistake amplified. Martin entered differently, quietly, earnestly, fighting for a role. On a roster filled with stars, including A'ja Wilson, there was no room for hesitation. Every minute had to be earned. Every opportunity had to be maximized. And that's exactly what she did. Not by changing who she was, but by leaning into it. She became the same player she had always been. The glue, the voice, the effort that doesn't stop. And slowly, the league started to notice. Not through headlines, but through impact. Rebounds that extended possessions, defensive plays that disrupted rhythm, smart passes that kept the offense flowing, shots taken when they mattered. Not forced, not rushed, just right. And then came the game, the one that brought everything full circle. Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces. Clark versus Martin. Not as teammates, as opponents. The moment felt almost surreal. The familiarity between them created something unique, an understanding that most matchups don't have. They knew each other's tendencies, strengths, instincts, yet neither could rely on that completely, because this wasn't Iowa anymore. This was different. The game unfolded with intensity. The Aces, polished and experienced, moved with confidence. The Fever, still finding their identity, fought to keep pace. Clark navigated traps and pressure, adjusting with each possession. Martin stepped into her role, contributing in ways that didn't always scream for attention, but quietly shifted the game. There was no dramatic confrontation, no single defining moment between them, just competition, pure and simple. And maybe that's what made it so powerful, because beneath it all, the respect never disappeared. Clark would later say it openly. Martin could do things she couldn't. That acknowledgement says everything. It reframes the entire narrative. This isn't about one player overshadowing another, it's about two players who made each other better, who still see each other clearly even as their paths diverge. The game ends, the aces win, but the result almost feels secondary, because what matters is what continues. The story doesn't end here, it evolves. Martin builds her place in the league, proving night after night that she belongs, that the qualities that defined her in college translate to the highest level. Clark continues to adapt, to grow, to carry the expectations that come with her name while learning the realities of professional basketball. And every time they meet, the story deepens. Not louder, but richer, more layered. Because now it's not just about where they came from, it's about where they're going. And maybe that's the most compelling part of all. This isn't a rivalry fueled by tension or animosity. It's something rarer, a connection that survives competition, a story that refuses to simplify itself into winners and losers. Because in the end, both of them are winning, just in different ways. One through spotlight, one through substance, both through persistence. And for the fans watching, for the kids in classrooms, for the people who found themselves drawn into this journey without even realizing it, this story offers something more than entertainment. It offers meaning. It shows that greatness doesn't come in one form, that impact isn't limited to headlines, that sometimes the most important player on the court isn't the one scoring the most points, but the one holding everything together. And that friendships, even when tested by competition, don't have to break. They can evolve. So as this story continues to unfold, the question isn't just what happens next on the court, it's what this journey represents.